Do you feel like you have to be everywhere on all the social media all the time to grow your business? Does it feel exhausting that you're spending hours and hours doing things that don't actually yield any fruit? If so, then my guest today is for you. Stef Gass is going to be here. She's talking about how do you build a business in less than 2 hours per week. And so if you're a busy mom like me, then this episode is for you. Hey friend, welcome to the Milk and Honey with Lemon podcast. Do you want financial freedom and to step into your God-given leadership? Do you find yourself up late at night Googling leadership or the Proverbs 31 woman or maybe motherhood and business? Do you wake up with these big ambitious goals only to feel stressed about who God actually called you to be when your kiddos interrupt your time with the Lord and you just feel disconnected from God again? Hey, I'm Lemon. I too was a woman who knew she was meant for more. I too felt frustrated and disconnected and wished I could step into my purpose. I wanted to really have a deep heart connection with God and figure out who I was in Him as a daughter. But I kept telling myself I didn't have a place in leadership and this was all I was ever going to be meant for. I could just worry about me later when the kids grew up and moved out of the house. Until I found out how to really become a Proverbs 31 woman through leadership development. In this podcast, you will find financial freedom, leadership growth, and motivation so that you will be able to do all the things God has called you to do with ease. As you know, Stephanie is going to talk about podcasting and how to make podcasting work for you and your business. Now, if you're like, Lemon, I have always wanted to do a podcast, but I don't know how to do one, great. I want you to head to the show notes because I actually have a link to Stephanie's course to teach you how to do that, which is really exciting. And then if you're sitting there and you're like, Lemon, I have a podcast, but it's actually not bringing me any leads. It's not converting into any sales. It's not really doing anything for me. Well, then great. I have a link for you to go and check that out too. So head to the show notes, decide where you are in your podcasting journey, and go check out what Stephanie has to offer because I promise it will be a game changer for you and your business. Welcome back to the Milk and Honey podcast. I'm your host, Lemon Price, and I'm so excited to have my friend Stef Gass here today. Stephanie is a Christian business and podcast coach, and a darn good one at that. A boundary boss and a multi-six-figure CEO. She helps women grow their online businesses and make money online using podcasting. She has this beautiful top 20 globally ranked business podcast, Online Businesses for Christian Women. So good. Go check it out. And she believes it's possible to partner with God to create income and impact without sacrificing your family, your faith, or buying into the social media hustle. So thanks for being here today, Stephanie.
Hi, Lemon. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited because we were talking before, and most of the women I talk to, they're like, I have to be everywhere all the time, doing all the things. And I'm on 75 different social media platforms, and it's super exhausting. And so I love that your mantra is you don't have to do that. So can you talk a little bit about why you don't think you need to be on social everywhere all the time?
Yeah, definitely. So for me, I've always been an entrepreneur. Not always. For the past 14 years, I've been an entrepreneur full time. And so I started out in network marketing, and then that actually just didn't work out, ended up crumbling. I was focused on all the wrong things. So then I had a total business breakdown and got obsessed with how can I make money? And started fixating on I thought blogging, and then I was making Amazon merch t-shirts. I was throwing spaghetti at the wall in every which way. And all the while thinking that social media definitely was the way to grow all these random businesses. So we see a lot of problems when we look at that story. We see that, first of all, I was focused on, instead of serving, what I could sell. And then secondly, focused on how I should connect with people that I thought would be the fastest instead of the most sustainable. So to make a very long story short, you feel free to ask any question you want about that story, Lemon. I found myself spending upward of 5 hours a day on Instagram, specifically growing my business. So I would try to grab any cute thing my kid was doing so that I could connect with other moms. And then any trip we went on, I had to grab all the things and document them and post them real time and just all this stuff. I had grown the platform to over 40,000 followers. I had a couple thousand likes per post when I was at the height. I had 500, 750 viewers on the stories, and it all felt really good, except for the fact that I was spending so many hours doing it. And I wasn't seeing the return on all that time investment. So I got to this moment where actually for me, it was just this God led, like, you need to stop and just have a Sabbath from this whole thing, get some clarity. So I took a 30-day Sabbath from Instagram, and I had started the podcast at this point. And it was crazy because I felt like I was like released from this invisible prison. I felt like I could just be with my kids without my phone in my hand. I felt free. I had all this time. I'm like, oh, I'm going to do another episode a week on the podcast. I had all these ideas for my business. Like, it was amazing, but I was so terrified that everything would fall apart. So at the end of the 30 days, I look at all the metrics, and nobody had touched Instagram at all. No one on the team. We hadn't used it in any capacity. Everything grew, like the downloads on the show, the email list, the revenue. And I said, let's keep going. Ended up doing 6 months just to test. Do we really need social media? And ended up exploding, like completely exploding. Like, revenue was doubling. It was just absolutely crazy. And I knew that it was God's blessing on this other way of building a business, that I was really called to help women see that they could have this really simple business model using podcasting. So that's what led me to it. And here's, if you want to hear the actual numbers and some actual tacticals around maybe why social media doesn't really work to grow a business. And I know that if this is the first time you're hearing this, might feel shocking, or you may feel like averse to what I'm saying right now, but I would ask that you would just open your heart and mind for a moment to see if there's any level of truth here. Because maybe it's not getting off social completely, but it's just taking a step back. It's dialing back and thinking about, am I growing this in a way that's sustainable? Or am I growing this in a way where I am chasing after that overnight success? Because that is a lie. You guys called it out. Imagine you're at a stadium, okay? And there's 20,000 people at this football stadium. And you walk into the football stadium and you're holding your offer, okay? Whether it's, if you sell a product, you sell a service, you have an Etsy shop with stuff that you market, you have an online business, you walk into the stadium and everybody's screaming at the top of their lungs, look at my offer, look at my offer, look at my offer. And everybody's screaming at the same time. That's social media, okay? So everybody's out there going, look at me, whether it's an offer, whether it's whatever it is, everyone's screaming at the same time. So does anybody actually look at you, connect with you? Probably not. But here's the kicker. You don't just go into that stadium once and hope for the best. You have to go in multiple times a day, scream about your offer. And the second that you leave the stadium, it doesn't stick. Nobody remembers you. Your offer doesn't get to stay in the stadium on the Jumbotron. It's dead. That's exactly what's happening on social media. Okay. So you've got all of these things against you is really what's happening. It's time. You've got to spend all this time. Your audience isn't seeing your stuff. You're screaming at the top of your lungs, and there's no connection. Those are my issues with it. No shelf life, no sustainability. And also it's addictive, highly addictive. The highest paid engineers in the world are getting paid to exploit the dopamine loop in your brain so that you literally, quite literally, are addicted to not just social platforms, but now also your phone. So we've got addiction on addiction, dopamine loop, all this stuff. There's a multitude of reasons why I think social is no longer a viable way for you to build a business online.
Oh, I love this so much because I was actually thinking about you this morning, because this week and this morning it happened, I had somebody reach out. She joined my community that I have, downloaded the freebies. I've had a couple of people buy my offers lately, all off the podcast.
Yes.
And every single one of them, they said, A, it was exactly what I needed. And B, I felt a deeper connection to you, listening to you over and over again. But it only takes me an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours to podcast every week. And I'm months ahead, which is really beautiful. And I would love for you to, like I said, we got super busy moms. They're like, all right, now they've get over the shock of saying you don't have to be on social all the time. What would you do if you were like starting your business all over completely from scratch with what now? What would you do?
Oh my gosh. The first thing I would do is figure out, what is my house going to be? I'd build my house. And what I mean when I say that is you guys remember, you guys all have kids, little kids, the story of the 3 little pigs and then building their house. And so I want to build a house out of brick. I want my house to be one house that I know is going to be sustainable within weathering the storms. If there's a fire, my house is still going to be standing. It's a safe place to be. It's a place for my friends to come over. Anyways, this house is what we need to build for your business. And what is that house going to be? It's got to be long form. It's got to be sustainable. So there's only 3 long form options for you to build. And what do I say that? So social media is short form, right? You put content out and it disappears. There's nothing wrong with short form as long as it's pointing back to the one house, the long form. So if you're going to have social, it needs to point back to what is the thing that's going to withstand the test of time, that doesn't fade away within 24 hours, that all of the people you're marketing it to can actually see it every single day. There's no algorithm that is shoving you down and down unless you're paying to play. And that would be 3 things. One can be written, which is blogging. It's my least favorite because it takes the most time. And now you're battling with AI. So that is just the reality of where we are. Secondly is video. That's my second favorite. And that would be YouTube, doing a video marketing. And this works really well for those of you that have a product, like you're a makeup artist or you sell a journal or you sell a physical product. YouTube is a great way for you to have a long form platform that you can start marketing one-to-many instead of one-to-one. And we'll talk about that in a moment. And then lastly, it would be audio, which is my absolute favorite. And Lemon has already alluded to it. It's podcasting. It's what I teach. And the reason that I teach podcasting is because this is a place where you go ahead and market the thing that you are. Give me an example, Lemon. Like, what does somebody do in your community? And I'll give them a live example of how they would set up this podcast as top of funnel.
Oh, I love it. Biblical leadership development for women
Good.
is a service that a lot of them offer.
Amazing. So you're doing biblical leadership development. So if you wanted to keep it super SEO friendly, search engine optimization friendly, you would literally call it Biblical Leadership Development Podcast. It can be that basic as far as what do I call it and what am I going to do? The least less fancy, the better as far as getting found. And then you have episodes around, let's say you have something like, what does the Bible say about leadership? And then maybe you have Prayer Thursday or something like that. And you have these episodes on your podcast where you're connecting with your ideal client, you're putting value out into the world, and you're being strategic about what that content is going to look like. People actually search for these terms or they find your podcast because they're looking for these answers that you have. Very different from being a stadium with 20,000 people, everybody's screaming, nobody's there for the right reasons, versus you're sitting in a coffee shop, multiple people are in line to come into the coffee shop and sit down and have coffee with you because you have the exact answer and coaching and teaching that they want right now. And they're ready to listen and they're ready to learn. That's what's happening with this podcast. So people might come and listen to your show in one episode. Let's say it's 15 minutes long. They hear you tell them, hey, you want to dive deeper into biblical leadership development? I have 3 coaching spots open this month. I would love to sit down with you and refine your leadership skills in a biblical way or whatever that might look like. Go over here and book a free discovery call with me. So you are now actually closing sales and increasing conversion directly from a podcast episode that you sat down and recorded, as Lemon said, in an hour and a half. You put into the world. It goes all across the world and all these different platforms with one click of a button. And people all across the world are getting in line at your coffee shop, right? They're like, oh my gosh, I want to listen. I want to listen. I want to listen. And just like Lemon said, she already sold a few offers just off one episode recently. And she did nothing. Like she didn't have to go and scream and shout and go into DMs. The leads came to her and decided to purchase. And that's what happens for my show too. And all of my students are feeling that really easy conversion. So that's what I would do first is I would set up my podcast. That is the first thing I would do, Lemon, if I had a new business, because that's what's going to grow your audience.
I love that so much because there is just such a deeper connection and it's the intentionality behind it. And I love like I remember a few weeks ago, we were coming out of church and I had an email that had 4 people who downloaded my lead magnet. And I was like, this is great. I'm like, I have no idea where they came from. And they put their phone number into and I text them. I'm like, hey, great. Like, where'd you find it? They're like, oh, I was listening to your podcast. And I'm like, this is so cool, right? Now you're in my funnel and you're being served and I'm pouring into you and you're listening to more episodes. And I think it really helps set you up too as a thought leader. Being on podcasts has been huge for me. So by the time this airs, everybody will know that I just got featured in Forbes because of my podcast.
Yeah.
And so because somebody fell in love with listening to me talk, and it's opened up other media opportunities and all these cool things just because I do the audio. And it's so much easier. And I
Yes.
loved what you said too about not hanging out with my kids with my cell phone in my hand and feeling like I have to take pictures of every waking moment. Like I could literally run my business in 2 hours a week.
So simple. It's just so simple. It's so simple. Now, that doesn't make it easy because
Mm-mm.
everything that we choose to do has a different level of hard tied to it. And I would say the one hard thing about podcasting is that it takes consistency and discipline. That's the only part for me that I could see being difficult. It's not how do I start? Because there's 100 ways that you're going to find your how, and Lemon will tell you about one later. The how can always be found. The clarity on what it should be about, it's going to tie to your business, whatever your business might be. That's what the podcast is going to tie. It's going to be all about the person that you serve. But the hard part is there's no vanity metric. Yes, you'll see your downloads, but a podcast is really about consistency and discipline. And I often see the big, audacious, incredible breakthrough for people like 12 to 24 months in. And so that's the part about you're going to build a house that's sustainable. You've got to decide if you want to have a successful business that actually makes real money and real revenue, and you want to grow into this really incredible business owner, what is your house going to be? And stop moving. Like I can't build a house here and then move over here and cultivate that house too. You got to pick the thing that's really going to be that one thing for you that you're going to give everything into, and you're going to make it the best that you possibly can. And that's why it's going to be successful. And that's why people are going to trust you, because they know, oh man, if I want to learn about biblical business development or leadership development, this is my person. This is the podcast I come to. I binge listen to her. And when I'm ready and willing to invest, that is the program I'm going to buy. So you've got to have that kind of heart posture when you decide whatever your thing is going to be. You got to go all in on it.
I love that so much because I'm 10 months into my podcast, and it's just now that I'm seeing the fruits of the effort. And every week I get the email with the podcast stats, and I notice like my very first episode, the numbers just keep creeping up and up because people are telling me they're binge listening to everything. And I'm 70 episodes in 10 months, and people are just binging all 70 episodes listening to me. And it is
seriously
wild.
How
Absolutely.
else do you get that? How else would you have that time with an ideal client? Like you can't have that many DM conversations with somebody. You cannot ask for a better way to be front of mind than a podcast. And I hear the same thing, Lemon. They say, I binge listened to your show. When it's like, how did you find me? Or why are you taking this course? Or welcome to the community. What happened? They're like, I just binge listened to your podcast. They're like drives, workouts, in the bathtub. It was like Stef was on the phone. So much so that it grew the trust, and it grew a true relationship. Like they really know who I am as a coach, and they decide to make that investment. And so now you're seeing that same exact thing. So this is not just one person being like a toad, being really good at this. This can happen and work for anybody in any business model. I've had thousands of students with all the different things that you could possibly imagine. And this model works.
Yeah, I love this. That's how I ended up here. So I've had so many friends work with you. Going back to Tracy Wren many years ago, like I've had so many friends be like, this is the thing you need to do. You need to do it. You need to do it. And I'm like, I'm over here with my TikTok and everything is great. But it was so exhausting to post on TikTok 3 times a day and post here and be in this group. I remember when, I'm sure you remember back in like 2015, 2016, the thing was pick 3 to 5 groups to be a part of. And then you need to post in it 3 times a day. I'm like, who has time for that? I don't have time for that. And it's just white noise and it wasn't sustainable. And then I'm getting on discovery calls and all these things. Now, when I get on a call with somebody, they're already sold. They know they want me. They know they like me. They just want to make sure that they've got all of the logistics in order and ask any final questions they have. And so my time is so much more free to go and do the things that I actually want to do. Not that I don't want to do my business, but I also didn't start a business to have it run my whole life.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And so you ended up actually connecting with me through all of those people, Lemon, to come and check out Podcast to Profit.
Yep, I sure did.
Yeah. And so I actually have a program that Lemon's in right now that teaches you how to take I have a course that teaches you how to podcast. And so Lemon will have that link for you guys, of course, as well, which are 12 steps to start a podcast. That's everybody's first step. You have a business, but you don't have a podcast that's working for you to grow an audience. that is your first step. Take Podcast Pro University, it's called. It's 12 steps, 30 days, get a podcast done. That is not the hard part. That's like having the baby. You think that's so hard. Oh, I'm going to plan for all 9 months to have my baby and I'm going to have the perfect birth plan and all this stuff. But then you have the baby and you're like, now what? Like, somebody can teach me how to swaddle this thing. You haven't done much planning or know like about all the next steps. And the next steps are the things that are actually super critical, because the next steps after you start the show are what help you optimize, set up podcast SEO, create an offer that's highly converting, or fine tune the offer that you already have, clean up your marketing and your messaging and your back end stuff. Like Lemon had mentioned, emails and email marketing. Do you have all of those components in place? All of that is in my group coaching program, Podcast to Profit, which is 6 months long. And if that is you, like either one, you don't have a show yet, you'll take Podcast Pro. If you do have a show, Podcast to Profit. Lemon, I don't know if you want to add anything else about that, but those are some how resources for you guys if you're interested in that.
Yeah, I can tell you. So I started a podcast back in 2018. It was terrible. Hated everything about it. Swore I would never podcast again. And then, of course, I married my husband. He went to school for audio production and engineering. Now I have 3 different fancy microphones and 2 interfaces in my office, and it's excessive. And,
Awesome.
but it all came with with school tuition. And so it just sat in my office because where else is it going to sit? That just makes sense. And then God woke me up at 3 a.m. and was like, you're going to start a podcast again. I was like, absolutely not. I'm not going to do that again. And then I was like, whatever, I'll just do it. I'll do the thing. And then everybody kept coming to me and they're like, you need to go work with Stef. You need to go work with Stef, because I'm sitting here growing a business, but I'm in the DMs and I'm exhausted. And I remember at one point running my business, your jaw's going to hit the floor when I tell you this sentence. I took a client call on my way to the operating room before a surgery because they had an emergency. She's like, her face. And literally the anesthesiologist had to take my phone. He was like, well, get it back to your husband. You have to end the Zoom meeting now. Like, we're about to have surgery.
Oh my gosh, Lemon.
So it was like this. I was like, this is not sustainable. It's not functional. I missed a Mother's Day with my children because I was like, this just is not sustainable at all in any way, shape, or form. And if that's you and you're like, I don't have the space or the capacity to run my business or be a present parent and steward the things that God has given you well, then this is for you. And I can tell you, I've learned so much, and I've been in marketing for, oh my gosh, since 10 years. I've been in marketing for 10 years and I've learned so much, and it's just exploded my business to the umpteenth degree. And so I would recommend anybody go take either one of Stef's courses with her, because it will be a game changer for you.
Oh, thanks, girl. It's been an evolution of doing all the things the wrong way as well, and learning that running a business with God at the center, it feels peaceful and it feels light, and it is 100% possible. And so if any of you listening are finding, maybe you have that like conviction right now that maybe there's a different way to do this, lean into that a little bit. It was definitely an evolution for me of, let me start somewhere. Let me start with getting off of the socials on the weekends, and I would delete the apps, and I started there. And then it was praying like intentionally, God, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to connect with people? I don't know the answer. I'm on Facebook and Instagram. I'm doing everything. And then I had a dream. It was October of 2018. Same thing. Woke me up. You will start a podcast. I'm like, same thing that you said, Lemon. What? I don't listen to podcasts, Lord. I don't have nice microphones. I had a $20 Amazon mic in a drawer, plugged it in. But because God said go, I started there, and I started scrappy, and I took some really messy action. I really wasn't clear on what I was even talking about, but because it was God led, He had the favor over that decision. And you don't have to worry so much about how and when and what's that going to look like. All God's looking for is your yes, for you to take that one next right step, and He paves the way for you. And just if this feels like something interesting to you, lean into that a little bit, because it could be an answer to your prayer, to truly getting your time and your life back. I can't believe what God's done with my podcast now. Like, it's a full-fledged business. It's a company. I have employees. I have all this crazy, incredible stuff happening. Like you, Lemon, I've got speaking gigs and paid speaking opportunities just from the show. And it all began with me asking the question, like, how do I reach and connect with people in an easier way that's less time consuming, where I don't have to put on my makeup every day? That's literally where the question came from. And so if that's lean into that a little bit.
Wow. I love this. Normally I ask people like, oh, where can we go connect with you at? But go listen to her show. That's what you should go do. And I know you have a Facebook group too, and I will link to that in the show notes for you guys too. It's great. There's a lot of her students actually come in and do moderation and all that. I'm doing it in November. So it is super fun. Go connect with Stef. Go listen to her show. It is incredible. Come take any of her podcast courses. It will be such a good decision for you. I know you're busy. And this is the thing that you need. Like, this is the thing that will set you free from the bondage that social media has over you. And so could not recommend it enough. So thank you, Stephanie, for being here. I just so appreciate you coming on and just sharing your journey with everybody.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thanks for having me.
Friend, tell me you did not love hearing everything that Stephanie had to share. So like I said, head over to the show notes, grab a link to check out Stephanie's either Podcast to Profit or Podcast Pro University to get started with your podcasting journey. I promise it will be one of your favorite investments. It's been a game changer for me and my business. I now have time to hang out with my family and not feel so plugged in all the time, because this is living evergreen for me. And I know that's something that you want to do as well. So head over to the show notes, grab a link, and go check out what Stephanie has to offer. Hey mama, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, would you take 30 seconds and share this episode with a friend who may want to run their business in less than 2 hours a week? Also, please be sure to leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It tells the Apple machine to, share this with other people, and I would deeply appreciate that. It honestly lights me up to know that this podcast is helping you. And so I am going to jet set off to go hang out with my family because, like I said, I get to do this in less than 2 hours a week and spend the rest of the time with my family. So I'll see you back on Monday for another episode. Bye, friend.